Welcome to Craftlit, the podcast for crafters who like books. My name is Heather Wardover, and I'm podcasting from my corner of the Sonoran Desert, the Old Pueblo, Tucson, Arizona. Episode 89, Eftsoons, Graybeard Loon. This episode of Craftlit is brought to you by Knitting Out Loud. Listen while you knit. Hello! I am giving you a bonus episode today on Rime of the Ancient Mariner. And what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to break into the narrative because it is a long poem. It's almost 30 minutes of audio. I'm going to break into the narrative and explain bits and pieces as we go along. I'm not going to do any of the goofy stuff today or particularly crafty stuff today because I really don't have time and I want to get this out to you so that you finally have it. I also am, of course, getting ready to start Little Women and I'm amassing some fun, interesting things for you as well. But I did want to get on to Rime of the Ancient Mariner. And this is a poem by Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and I had a very hard time finding a decent recording of it. Librivox had 3, and the third one was good. The first 2 were really kind of frightening, and I would never have done that to you. But eftsoons, which is a word that I used in the introduction, means after, and gray-eyed loon is is what someone, a bridegroom, calls a wedding guest. Sorry, not the bridegroom. A wedding guest calls this crazy old man, the ancient mariner, a graybeard loon, which is, of course, when you teach this in high school, what all the kids start calling each other. So we like that. Rime of the Ancient Mariner is Coleridge. Coleridge you may remember from Kubla Khan. He had an unfortunate addiction to, I'm going to have to double check. I think it was laudanum. I'll check on that for you. It was certainly an opiate at some point, which is where you get Kubla Khan from. He wrote some other really wonderful things as well, but my personal favorite is Rime of the Ancient Mariner, even though it does go on a bit. One of the things that Coleridge is trying to do here on purpose is sound old-fashioned. That doesn't really come across to us because to us all of it sounds old-fashioned, but this really sounds old-fashioned, which is one of the reasons why I'm going to be breaking into the narrative, because really there are parts where you just would go, what? What is he saying? Because everybody does. It's not just you. Remember, we're better. We know more. He even added things like wacky sidebar notes and footnotes and things like that to the original poem. And the funny part about that is that those notes really don't help you understand the poem at all. In fact, in some ways, they make it more confusing. So we're going to ignore most of those. Personally, I think his ridiculous side notes are meant to be funny and kind of like, if you've read a really good translation of Don Quixote, you have read the intro. And the intro is where Cervantes makes some of his, I think, some of his best jokes, where he goes through to explain that he wasn't really a very good writer and he had to go and ask a friend for help. And it's the conversation with the friend that exposes what a good writer he really is. I think it's the same kind of thing. The Rime of the Ancient Mariner works on a bunch of different levels. There is a very, very simple story here, which is teaching you a moral lesson that all God's creatures deserve to be treated well. He liveth best who loveth best is one of the more famous lines from it. And I think all of that is true. But I also think Coleridge is never above playing a joke on his readers. And I think he's, in trying to make this sound like an ancient poem, I think he's really loaded this thing with, in some places, conflicting symbolism. What I love about the poem, though, is that you can talk about it for hours because it's really, really loaded. But I also really love the fact that he to me, one of the things I love most about the Romantics, and especially about Coleridge, is that they are masters of mood. And when you listen to this poem, especially the middle and towards the end, all I can think of is the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disneyland. There's that one part with the skeleton ship, the skeleton crew on the skeleton ship, and the wind is blowing, and the ship is still sailing even though the sails are in tatters and they're pretty much see-through. That I'm pretty confident that they got that image from this poem. And there are lots of images like that. And of course, there's the famous albatross and all of this stuff. And as far as I can tell, an albatross didn't mean anything more than an albatross until this poem came along. So not surprisingly, once again, you are going to hear multiple levels of narration in a poem, very much like Frankenstein. You are going to hear references to things that sound very familiar because Mary Shelley borrowed them from Frankenstein. And the whole thing starts with the external story of a group of wedding guests heading to a wedding, and they're stopped by a crazy-eyed mariner, and he begins to tell his tale. He has a reason for telling his tale. It will all make sense by the end. I promise. I hope you enjoy it. Here is Samuel Taylor Coleridge's poem, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner.
The Rime of the Ancient Mariner by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Read for Librivox.org by David Barnes. Part 1. It is an ancient mariner, and he stoppeth one of three. By thy long grey beard and glittering eye, now wherefore stopp'st thou me? The bridegroom's doors are open wide, and I am next of kin. The guests are met, the feast is set, mayst hear the merry din. He holds him with his skinny hand. There was a ship, quoth he. Hold off, unhand me, grey-beard loon. Eftsoons his hand dropped he. He holds him with his glittering eye. The wedding guest stood still, and listens like a 3 years' child. The mariner hath his will. The wedding guest sat on a stone, he cannot choose but hear, and thus spake on that ancient man, the bright-eyed mariner. The ship was cheered, the harbour cleared. Merrily did we drop below the kirk, below the hill, below the lighthouse top. The sun came up upon the left, out of the sea came he, and he shone bright, and on the right went down into the sea. Higher and higher every day, till over the mast at noon. The wedding guest here beat his breast, for he heard the loud bassoon. The bride hath paced into the hall, red as a rose is she, nodding their heads before she goes, the merry minstrelsy. The wedding guest he beat his breast, yet he cannot choose but hear, and thus spake on that ancient man, the bright-eyed mariner. And now the storm blast came, and he was tyrannous and strong. He struck with his o'ertaking wings, and chased us south along. With sloping masts and dipping prow, as who pursued with yell and blow, still treads the shadow of his foe, and forward bends his head. The ship drove fast, loud roared the blast, and southward aye we fled. And now there came both mist and snow, and it grew wondrous cold, and ice mast high came floating by, as green as emerald. And through the drifts the snowy cliffs did send a dismal sheen, nor shapes of men nor beasts we ken, the ice was all between. The ice was here, the ice was there, the ice was all around. It cracked and growled and roared and howled, like noises in a swound. At length did cross an albatross, thorough the fog it came, and as it had been a Christian soul, we hailed it in God's name. It ate the food it ne'er had eat, and round it flew. The ice did split with a thunder fit, the helmsman steered us through. And a good south wind sprung up behind, the albatross did follow, and every day, for food or play, came to the mariner's hollow. In mist or cloud, on mast or shroud, it perched for vespers 9, whiles all the night through fog smoke white glimmered the white moonshine.
All right, so you've already heard one reference that brings back Frankenstein. The ice mast high came floating by. They're heading towards the south, towards Antarctica. This is the natural habitat, as far as I understand it, of the albatross, so it's not a surprise for them to have seen it. They are very big. It has a 4-meter wingspan. That's a big one. It's a big bird. And obviously that would weigh quite a bit. We're going to break back into the previous narrative with the wedding guest talking to the mariner. So the mariner's been telling his tale to the wedding guests. They're getting a little freaked out, and that's what you're going to hear next.
God save the ancient mariner from the fiends that plague thee thus. Why look'st thou so? With my crossbow I shot the albatross.
Always loved that particular verse of this poem. It's just so simple and so clear, and it works like a punctuation mark because you really do pay attention to what the mariner has just said, which is that he killed something that was completely innocent and white, and something that, if you're superstitious, you might believe had been helping the boat along on its merry way. This is one of the interesting things in the poem is you never really have a reason. There's never a reason that's given for why the ancient mariner did this. It doesn't really matter why. What matters is what happens next. So on to part 2. And I apologize for the whistling wind that occasionally is beating into the microphone. This truly is the best recording I found. I like the guy's voice a lot, and he pronounces things correctly, which I consider a plus. And honestly, I kind of like the sound of the sea in the background. So here we go with part 2.
Part 2. The sun now rose upon the right. Out of the sea came he, still hid in mist, and on the left went down into the sea. And the good south wind still blew behind, but no sweet bird did follow, nor any day for food or play came to the mariner's hollow. And I had done a hellish thing, and it would work 'em woe, for all averred I had killed the bird that made the breeze to blow. Ah, wretch, said they, the bird to slay that made the breeze to blow. Nor dim nor red, like God's own head, the glorious sun uprist. Then all averred I had killed the bird that brought the fog and mist. 'Twas right, said they, such birds to slay that bring the fog and mist. The fair breeze blew, the white foam flew, the furrow followed free. We were the first that ever burst into that silent sea.
So the guys are a little fickle. First they're ticked off that he's killed the albatross, but then they decide that no, the albatross was actually bringing the fog. He wasn't making the breezes blow, he was bringing the fog, and so therefore it wasn't such a bad thing that he shot the albatross. And now we'll see what happens next.
Down dropped the breeze, the sails dropped down, 'twas sad as sad could be, and we did speak only to break the silence of the sea. All in a hot and copper sky, the bloody sun at noon, right up above the mast did stand, no bigger than the moon. Day after day, day after day we stuck, nor breath nor motions, as idle as a painted ship upon a painted ocean. Water, water, everywhere, and all the boards did shrink. Water, water everywhere, nor any drop to drink.
Well, if you didn't know that little couplet there, dual couplet, was where water, water everywhere came from, now you do. It's obviously rather famous, but I also really love that image of the painted ship upon a painted ocean. I think this is one of the things that Coleridge is capable of doing. I talked before about how the Romantics really were good at mood, and I think these very, very short, precise images that he's able to communicate are part of what makes him so powerful. And it's true in Kubla Khan as well, even if he was completely out of his mind when he wrote it. We're going to break back in, but I love that. Water, water everywhere. And all the boards did shrink. I mean, the idea that it's so dry that it's sucking the moisture out of the boards that make the ship. That's pretty scary.
The very deep did rot. Oh Christ, that ever this should be. Yea, slimy things did crawl with legs upon the slimy sea. About, about, in reel and rout, the death fires danced at night. The water, like a witch's oils, burnt green and blue and white.
This sounds like Coleridge is stoned again, but actually I think he's been listening to stories from sailors, because what it sounds to me about the water burning green and blue and white, this death fire, I have a friend, Carlene, who I have since lost track of, who was studying marine biology in Southern California, and she had the opportunity once to sail a ship back from Hawaii, and in the middle of the night one night called everyone up on deck because of the bioluminescence. Everything around her was glowing green and blue, and it was really kind of spooky and scary and beautiful all at the same time. But now we're moving from that kind of awesome image into a much scarier one coming from the other shipmates.
And some in dreams assured were of the spirit that plagued us so. 9 fathom deep he had followed us from the land of mist and snow. And every tongue through utter drought was withered at the root. We could not speak, no more than if we had been choked with soot. Ah, well a day, what evil looks had I from old and young. Instead of the cross, the albatross about my neck was hung.
So we've heard the phrase before that everyone has their cross to bear. Well, the mariner has the albatross to bear. And it is very much his penance that he has to do for having made such a horrible, horrible mistake. Fathom, by the way, is a linear measurement of about 6 feet. It's water depth, and so the image is that there is something that's 40 some odd feet below. What's 9 times 6, Heather? Quick. 54 feet below their ship. There is something that they have brought with them, something sinister that is causing all this bad stuff to happen. And it's been, I guess, exacerbated by the death of the albatross.
Part 3. There passed a weary time. Each throat was parched and glazed each eye. A weary time, how glazed each weary eye. When looking westward I beheld a something in the sky. At first it seemed a little speck, and then it seemed a mist. It moved and moved, and looked at last a certain shape I wist. A speck, a mist, a shape I wist, and still it neared and neared. As if it dodged a water sprite, it plunged and tacked and veered. With throats unslaked, with black lips baked, we could not laugh nor wail. Through utter drought all dumb we stood. I bit my arm, I sucked the blood, and cried, "A sail! A sail!" With throats unslaked, with black lips baked, agape they heard me call. "Gramercy!" they for joy did grin, and all at once their breath drew in, as they were drinking all. "See, see!" I cried, "she tacks no more. Hither to work us wheel. Without a breeze, without a tide, she steadies with upright keel." The western wave was all aflame, the day was well nigh done. Almost upon the western wave rested the broad bright sun, when that strange shape drove suddenly betwixt us and the sun. And straight the sun was flecked with bars. Heaven's mother send us grace, as if through a dungeon grate he peered with broad and burning face. Alas, thought I, and my heart beat loud, how fast she nears and nears. Are those her sails that glance in the sun like restless gossameres? And those her ribs through which the sun did peer as through a grate? And is that woman all her crew? Is that a death? And are there two? Is death that woman's mate?
These two are two of the scarier images in the poem. There's a lot of very Christian imagery in the poem, which is there and it's supposed to be there. Coleridge definitely put it there on purpose. These two are two of the pieces that don't really fit that imagery, which is one of the reasons why this poem is very compelling, and also one of the reasons why it's confused people so much. You've got death and the nightmare life and death. Life and death is the pale woman with golden locks and red lips, and death is her companion. And they, like the mariner, are scary because they're reckless. They're not following kind of the rules of society, and certainly not the rules of kind of iconic Christian imagery that you would expect in a poem that seems to be a moralistic poem. So here, listen to what they do.
Her lips were red, her looks were free, her locks were bright as gold, her skin was as white as leprosy. The nightmare, life in death was she, who thicks man's blood with cold. The naked hulk alongside came, and the twain were casting dice. The game is won, I've won, quoth she, and whistles thrice. The sun's rim dips, the stars rush out, at one stride comes the dark, with far-heard whisper o'er the sea, off shot the spectre bark. We listened and looked sideways up, fear at my heart as at a cup my life-blood seemed to sip. The stars were dim and thick the night, the steersman's face by his lamp gleamed white, from the sails the dew did drip, till clomb above the eastern bar the horned moon with one bright star within the nether tip. One after one by the star-dogged moon, too quick for groan or sigh, each turned his face with a ghastly pang, and cursed me with his eye. 4 times 50 living men, and I heard not sigh nor groan, with heavy thump a lifeless lump they dropped down one by one. The souls did from their bodies fly, they fled to bliss or woe, and every soul it passed me by like the whiz of my crossbow.
Okay, tell me that's not just the coolest imagery of the souls going by him, whizzing by him like his crossbow arrows. I just love Coleridge. So death and life and death played dice for the men's souls. Life and death won, and so their souls have departed, but the bodies are still moving. And now is when it gets really creepy. And you're going to hear from the wedding guest again shortly.
Part 4. I fear thee, ancient mariner, I fear thy skinny hand, and thou art long and lank and brown, as is the ribbed sea sand. I fear thee, and thy glittering eye, and thy skinny hand so brown. Fear not, thou wedding guest, this body dropped not down. Alone, alone, all alone, alone on a wide, wide sea, and never a saint took pity on my soul in agony. The many men so beautiful, and they all dead did lie, and 1,000 slimy things lived on, and so did I. I looked upon the rotting sea, and drew my eyes away. I looked upon the rotting deck, and there the dead men lay. I looked to heaven, and tried to pray, but or ever a prayer had gushed, a wicked whisper came, and made my heart as dry as dust. I closed my lids, and kept them close, and the balls like pulses beat, for the sky and the sea, and the sea and the sky, lay like a load on my weary eye, and the dead were at my feet. The cold sweat melted from their limbs, nor rot nor reek did they. The look with which they looked on me had never passed away. An orphan's curse would drag to hell a spirit from on high, but oh, more horrible than that is the curse in a dead man's eye. 7 days, 7 nights I saw that curse, and yet I could not die. The moving moon went up the sky, and nowhere did abide. Softly she was going up, and a star or two beside. Her beams bemocked the sultry main, like April hoarfrost spread, and where the ship's huge shadow lay, the charmed water burnt alway, as still and awful red. Beyond the shadow of the ship, I watched the water snakes. They moved in tracks of shining white, and when they reared, the elfish light fell off in hoary flakes. Within the shadow of the ship, I watched their rich attire, blue, glossy green, and velvet black. They coiled and swam, and every track was a flash of golden fire. Oh, happy living things, no tongue their beauty might declare. A spring of love gushed from my heart, and I blessed them unaware. Sure, my kind saint took pity on me, and I blessed them unaware. The selfsame moment I could pray, and from my neck so free the albatross fell off and sank like lead into the sea.
So the mariner is able to see these giant water snakes moving through the moonlight and glittering, and they become beautiful to him. And it is this act of being able to recognize beauty in God's creatures that absolves, on some level, the mariner and allows him to be freed of the burden of the albatross, and it sinks into the ocean. You've probably already noticed that this is written kind of as a ballad. It's long, its meter is loose but regular. I think most of the rhyme and most of the rhythm that he's chosen, sometimes it's tetrameter, sometimes it's other stuff, it's all there to kind of drive the story forward, like half a league, half a league, half a league onward, that kind of driving rhythm. He does it, I think, he must deliberately. The man's no dummy, and I think it helps make the poem compelling because it makes you want to hear what happens next, like now.
Part 5. O sleep, it is a gentle thing, beloved from pole to pole. To Mary Queen the praise be given, she sent the gentle sleep from heaven that slid into my soul. The silly buckets on the deck that had so long remained, I dreamt that they were filled with dew, and when I awoke it rained. My lips were wet, my throat was cold, my garments all were dank. Sure I had drunken in my dreams, and still my body drank. I moved, and could not feel my limbs. I was so light, almost I thought that I had died in sleep, and was a blessed ghost. And soon I heard a roaring wind. It did not come anear, but with its sound it shook the sails that were so thin and sere. The upper air burst into life, and 100 fire flags sheen. To and fro they were hurried about, and to and fro and in and out the wan stars danced between. And the coming wind did roar more loud, and the sails did sigh like sedge, and the rain poured down from one black cloud. The moon was at its edge. The thick black cloud was cleft, and still the moon was at its side. Like water shot from some high crag, the lightning fell with never a jag, a river steep and wide. The loud wind never reached the ship, yet now the ship moved on. Beneath the lightning and the moon, the dead men gave a groan. They groaned, they stirred, they all uprose, nor spake nor moved their eyes. It had been strange, even in a dream, to have seen those dead men rise. The helmsman steered, the ship moved on, yet never a breeze up blew. The mariners all gan work the ropes, where they were wont to do. They raised their limbs like lifeless tools. We were a ghastly crew. The body of my brother's son stood by me, knee to knee. The body and I pulled at one rope, and he said naught to me.
Have you noticed in the Bible, anytime angels show up, they always start with things like, "Fear not"? I have a theory that it's pretty scary to see things like angels and seraphim and cherubim, and that they're not pretty glowing people with golden light coming from behind their beautiful heads. I think it's pretty scary to be in the presence of God. People are always falling on their knees and averting their eyes and all that stuff. You're going to hear more of that. You've already heard a little bit of it right now. The kind of horror of seeing the spirits moving the bodies of the dead men. You're going to see more of it. I also wanted to remind you that the animal, the creature, is 9 fathoms deep. 9 is a prime and a magic number. And he did his penance, the mariner did his penance, in 7 days and 7 nights. God made the world in 7 days. Noah had to wait 7 days for his dove to come back. These are both prime and magic numbers, and you're going to hear them coming up again.
I fear the ancient mariner. Be calm, thou wedding guest. 'Twas not those souls that fled in pain, which to their courses come again, but a troop of spirits blest. For when it dawned, they dropped their arms and clustered round the mast. Sweet sounds rose slowly through their mouths and from their bodies passed. Around, around flew each sweet sound, then darted to the sun. Slowly the sounds came back again, now mixed, now one by one. Sometimes, a dropping from the sky, I heard the skylark sing. Sometimes all little birds that are, how they seemed to fill the sea and air with their sweet jargoning. And now 'twas like all instruments, now like a lonely flute, and now it is an angel's song that makes the heavens be mute. It ceased, yet still the sails made on, a pleasant noise till noon, a noise like that of a hidden brook in the leafy month of June, that to the sleepy woods all night singeth a quiet tune. Till noon we quietly sailed on, yet never a breeze did breathe. Slowly and smoothly went the ship, moved onward from beneath. Under the keel 9 fathom deep, from the land of mist and snow, the spirit slid, and it was he that made the ship to go. The sails at noon left off their tune, and the ship stood still also. The sun, right up above the mast, had fixed her to the ocean, but in a minute she 'gan stir, with a short uneasy motion, backwards and forwards half her length, with a short uneasy motion. Then, like a pawing horse let go, she made a sudden bound. It flung the blood into my head, and I fell down in a swound. How long in that same fit I lay, I have not to declare, but ere my living life returned, I heard, and in my soul discerned, 2 voices in the air.
So the sun and the spirit of the ocean, 9 fathoms deep, have been fighting over the ship for whatever reason. Something in the air and something in the ocean have been playing tug of war with the boat. And finally it's released, and he falls down, and this wonderful narrative device is here. Coleridge inserts this moment where we have an opportunity to be the mariner. He's listening to 2 voices discussing the situation he's in, and we are placed in that same position. Again, it's just like in Frankenstein with the multiple levels of narrative. Coleridge is just doing it in a poem. So here's what they have to say.
Is it he, quoth one, is this the man, by him who died on cross? With his cruel bow he laid full low the harmless albatross. The spirit who bideth by himself in the land of mist and snow, he loved the bird that loved the man who shot him with his bow. The other was a softer voice, as soft as honey-dew. Quoth he, the man hath penance done, and penance more will do. Part 6. But tell me, speak again, thy soft response renewing, what makes that ship drive on so fast? What is the ocean doing? Still as a slave before his lord, the ocean hath no blast. His great bright eye most silently up to the moon is cast, if he may know which way to go, for she guides him smooth or grim. See, brother, see, how graciously she looketh down on him. But why drives on that ship so fast, without a wave or wind? The air is cut away before, and closes from behind. Fly, brother, fly, more high, or we shall be belated. For slow and slow that ship will go, when the mariner's trance is abated. I awoke, and we were sailing on, as in a gentle weather. 'Twas night, calm night, the moon was high, the dead men stood together. All stood together on the deck, for a charnel dungeon fitter. All fixed on me their stony eyes, that in the moon did glitter. The pang, the curse with which they died, had never passed away. I could not draw my eyes from theirs, nor turn them up to pray. And now this spell was snapped. Once more I viewed the ocean green, and looked far forth, yet little saw of what had else been seen. Like one that on a lonesome road doth walk in fear and dread, and having once turned round walks on, and turns no more his head, because he knows a frightful fiend doth close behind him tread. But soon there breathed a wind on me, nor sound nor motion made. Its path was not upon the sea, in ripple or in shade. It raised my hair, it fanned my cheek, like a meadow gale of spring. It mingled strangely with my fears, yet it felt like a welcoming. Swiftly, swiftly flew the ship, yet she sailed softly too. Sweetly, sweetly blew the breeze, on me alone it blew. O dream of joy, is this indeed the lighthouse top I see? Is this the hill? Is this the kirk? Is this mine own country? We drifted o'er the harbour bar, and I with sobs did pray, O let me be awake, my God, or let me sleep alway. The harbour bay was clear as glass, so smoothly it was strewn, and on the bay the moonlight lay, and the shadow of the moon. The rock shone bright, the kirk no less, that stands above the rock, the moonlight steeped in silentness the steady weathercock. And the bay was white with silent light, till rising from the same full many shapes that shadows were in crimson colours came. A little distance from the prow those crimson shadows were. I turned my eyes upon the deck. O Christ, what saw I there? Each corse lay flat, lifeless and flat, and by the holy rood a man all light, a seraph man, on every corse there stood. This seraph band each waved his hand, it was a heavenly sight. They stood as signals to the land, each one a lovely light. This seraph band each waved his hand, no voice did they impart, no voice, but oh, the silence sank like music on my heart. But soon I heard the dash of oars, I heard the pilot's cheer, my head was turned perforce away, and I saw a boat appear. The pilot and the pilot's boy, I heard them coming fast. Dear Lord in heaven, it was a joy the dead men could not blast. I saw a third, I heard his voice, it is the hermit good. He singeth loud his godly hymns that he makes in the wood. He'll shrieve my soul, he'll wash away the albatross's blood.
So just in case you thought it was very strange when he says by the Holy Rood, Holy Rood is another name for the cross that Jesus died on. And there are a number of churches scattered around Europe and England that have pieces, or they say they have pieces of the cross. And so it's not blasphemy or rude, R-U-D-E, it's R-O-O-D. So here he is, he's home. He has seen the scary, scary seraphim coming out of the bodies of the dead men on deck, and now the dead men on deck are simply dead bodies. Corpses is another word for corpses, and they are now just dead. And now he sees the pilot and the pilot's son and a hermit coming towards him. And this is the 7th and final section of Rime of the Ancient Mariner.
Part 7. This hermit good lives in that wood which slopes down to the sea. How loudly his sweet voice he rears! He loves to talk with marineers that come from a far country. He kneels at morn and noon and eve. He hath a cushion plump. It is the moss that wholly hides the rotted old oak stump. The skiff-boat neared. I heard them talk. Why, this is strange, I trow. Where are those lights, so many and fair, that signal made but now? Strange, by my faith, the hermit said, and they answered not our cheer. The planks looked warped, and see those sails, how thin they are and sere. I never saw aught like to them, unless perchance it were brown skeletons of leaves that lag my forest brook along. When the ivy tod is heavy with snow, and the owlet whoops to the wolf below that eats the she-wolf's young. Dear Lord, it hath a fiendish look, the pilot made reply. I am afeard. Push on, said the hermit cheerily. The boat came closer to the ship, but I nor spake nor stirred. The boat came close beneath the ship, and straight a sound was heard. Under the water it rumbled on, still louder and more dread. It reached the ship, it split the bay, the ship went down like lead. Stunned by that loud and dreadful sound, which sky and ocean smote, like one that hath been 7 days drowned, my body lay afloat. But swift as dreams myself I found within the pilot's boat. Upon the whirl where sank the ship, the boat spun round and round, and all was still, save that the hill was telling of the sound. I moved my lips. The pilot shrieked and fell down in a fit. The holy hermit raised his eyes and prayed where he did sit. I took the oars. The pilot's boy, who now doth crazy go, laughed loud and long, and all the while his eyes went to and fro. Ha ha, quoth he, full plain I see the devil knows how to row. And now, all in my own country, I stood on the firm land. The hermit stepped forth from the boat, and scarcely he could stand. O shrieve me, holy man! The hermit crossed his brow. Say quick, quoth he, I bid thee say, what manner of man art thou? Forthwith this frame of mine was wrenched with a woeful agony, which forced me to begin my tale, and then it left me free. Since then, at an uncertain hour, that agony returns, until my ghastly tale is told, this heart within me burns. I pass like night from land to land. I have strange power of speech. That moment that his face I see, I know the man that must hear me. To him my tale I teach. What loud uproar bursts from that door? The wedding guests are there, and in the garden bower the bride and bridesmaids singing are. And hark! The little vesper bell that biddeth me to prayer. O wedding guest, this soul hath been alone on a wide, wide sea. So lonely 'twas that God himself scarce seemed there to be. O sweeter than the marriage feast, 'tis sweeter far to me to walk together to the kirk with a goodly company. To walk together to the kirk and all together pray, while each to his great Father bends, old men and babes and loving friends, and youths and maidens gay. Farewell, farewell, but this I tell to thee, thou wedding guest, he prayeth well who loveth well both man and bird and beast. He prayeth best who loveth best all things both great and small, for the dear God who loveth us, he made and loveth all. The mariner, whose eye is bright, whose beard with age is hoar, is gone, and now the wedding guest turned from the bridegroom's door. He went like one that hath been stunned, and is of sense forlorn. A sadder and a wiser man, he rose the morrow morn.
And presumably, the ancient mariner felt compelled to talk to this particular man because this particular man had a lesson he needed to learn. The idea that he prayeth best who loveth best, caring for all God's creatures, the albatross, the snakes upon the sea, all of these things are things that we're supposed to pay attention to. Now, Coleridge, I talked about before, had added these kind of ridiculous side notes that were really arcane and convoluted and pretty much meant nothing. They're just kind of highfalutin gibberish. One of the theories is that he did this as a way, which I thought was very postmodern of him in the modern sense, of criticizing people for trying to make simple and straightforward poetry into more than it actually is, for trying to ascribe really complex and difficult meaning to what should be a fairly simple and straightforward poem. I've certainly seen this happen before with both professors and students, and I think I've told you about the essay that my AP teacher gave us on Jack and Jill, and how it's all, very sexual imagery, and it's all about this, that, and the other thing, and it was really quite ridiculous what they all came up with. They could, whoever wrote it was substantiating their points with quotes from the text, but they were taking them to a ridiculous extent. And he used that as shorthand, oh, you're Jack and Jilling this poem, or oh, you're Jack and Jilling this story. It's not as difficult as you think it is. It's kind of the Occam's razor thing. The simplest explanation is probably the correct one. And so some people believe that Coleridge put this whole poem together, one, because it's a great story and it's beautifully written, it's very compelling, but really just to focus you on this ending moment, very simple, very gentle, that a group of men were accosted by this old mariner, and by listening to his tale, he is doing part of his penance by passing on this important message. He liveth best who loveth best. He prayeth best who loveth best, to a group of guys who probably needed to hear it. And that's not a bad thing. That's kind of nice. I also forgot to break in before and tell you that kirk is another word for church, and so when they talk about going to the kirk, it's just an old-fashioned word for church. Coleridge is using words that are old-fashioned even for his audience at the time, which is one of the reasons why people think that he's doing it to kind of poke fun at people who ascribe deep and heavy meaning to kind of old-fashioned poems, or people who think that because something is old-fashioned, it is carrying with it mighty and weighty and accurate and true and wise information just because it's old, which is as ridiculous as, ignore everybody over the age of 30. So there you have it. Rime of the Ancient Mariner. I'm sorry, I kind of go back and forth whether I'm sorry about not doing it before Frankenstein or glad that I did it after. Maybe it's better that we did it after. I don't know that it would have helped understand Frankenstein anymore, but it certainly would have cemented Mary Shelley's style, because there are clearly parts in Frankenstein where she is trying to, if not imitate, at least pay homage to Mr. Samuel Taylor Coleridge, who, I looked it up, was addicted to opium, and he was addicted to opium because he had rheumatism, which was incredibly painful, and he was pretty young to be wrestling with that, so that's kind of sad. I think that's it. I'm going to go hang with my family. You are going to go have a great week. I'm not going to start Little Women until after April 6th. I have a big conference coming up. I have some research I want to do. I've got to get some stuff together. And then episode 90 will be the week of April 7th. I hope you have a great time until then. Lots and lots of fun. Enjoy spring. I know Chicago had a blizzard yesterday, so enjoy spring in whatever way you can. And I'll be back with you in April. Take care. Bye-bye. Please remember to support the people who support Craftlit. Go to knittingoutloud.com. Listen while you knit. You can find a blog for this podcast at craftlit.blogspot.com or craftlit.libsyn.com. That's Craftlit, C-R-A-F-T-L-I-T, all one word, and Libsyn, L-I-B-S-Y-N. And of course, you can subscribe at iTunes. Craftlit is supported by the generous donations of its listeners, and for that, I am truly grateful. And do remember, if your hands are too busy to pick up a book, at least you can turn one on.